4 of every 10 stress, anxiety and depression, according to a recent study by global consulting firm McKinsey. As per the report, a toxic workplace is the biggest reason if their job at almost 60% greater than the global average. In a different study, 41% of Indian employees cite a lack of separation, therefore face this substantial problem. Now, to be clear, this is a global study which was conducted in 15 countries, and similar trends in Asia, and at 4 out of 10, that is nearly 40%, India does stand a little higher than the global or similar kind of symptoms. Now, how to find burnout and what are the steps that can be taken? Of course, at an organizational point of view, there are steps that need to be taken, but even at an individual point of view. To speak on this, on something which is truly an urban pandemic, right? What I think is a very, very crucial discussion of our times. Varkha, let me begin by asking you how common this is. And is the biggest issue for people to even recognize that
work from home has begun, and the boundaries are now absolutely, unbelievable, where we are plugged in. So when one is not doing something is so much here. So I think it's more common than we think, leading to many physiological problems. So you've got blood pressure, diabetes, the bad boundaries, which was unfortunately triggered more since 2020 when the pandemic began, where all of us began to, reconstruct our lifestyles about how we were. Everyone wanted to be available. Everybody wanted to be on call. An enormous fatigue, which is now translating slowly and surely into a burnout.
Luke, how would someone identify if they are suffering from burnout? And at what point do you need to actually put your foot down and say, I need to do something about it? Because if you tell people that, oh, you're stressed, that is a part and parcel of everyone's life. It's nothing unusual. If you say you're tired or you're overworked, it's nothing unusual. You're supposed to just live with it. So how do you know when you need to press the panic button?
I think our body speaks to us all the time. And sleep is one, sleep fatigue. Most people today are sleep deprived because they're so burnt out, they can't sleep. Their mind is always working. They can't disconnect from those emails, from their conversations at work, from social media content. They can't disconnect, so they can't sleep. Now they wake up sleep deprived. Most of our patients have parameter levels spiking. We see blood pressure spiking. We see people develop cholesterol, definitely indicators that show. And, mostly when the person starts to feel disinterested, uninspired by their job, they're irritable, means that you're burning out. You're not in control of your life, your emotions, your behavior. And at that point, in fact, before that happens, we need to start drawing the line. There are fundamentals everywhere. And the fundamentals are not. So if management and corporates do not care about sleep, they're not going to care about sleep of their employees. So it trickles down. If they don't give enough of break time to people to eat a meal the right way, because your food also helps you with energy. Your energy helps you think better, handle problems and anxiety better. So you see, it's all interconnected. Your sleep, your exercise, and the food that you eat is connected to your emotional wellness. So the boundaries are some corporates, although it's the job of the corporates to create a healthy culture, we take personal responsibility. So if I'm working a lot, I should also make sure that they want to spend 2 to 3 hours on social media and content in order for them not to burn out.
There is a concept now of revenge hours, maybe, doing something for yourself even at the end of a long day because you're like, I deserve at least this much time. We're speaking about this from the point of view of individuals, Jang, but is this now becoming a factor that people take into consideration when they're looking at jobs? Are employers taking cognizance of this? Because at the end of the day...
And in fact, just before I begin, a quick clarification. So in my current role, I'm the CTO founder. Right. But I think the points that you raise are very, very valid. Most organizations are realizing that burnout is real. And they are also addressing it. Individual employees themselves need to listen to their own bodies and realize when they're getting burnt out. And more, as we speak to clients, employees are checking about or are talking about, to prospective employers do that, of course, as well. But at the same time, they are talking about, they also follow other pursuits. The second piece from a corporate side that we see happening more and more is at a group level, where employees are having honest conversation. I think organizations are also aware of this. This is not a fact that we've seen today. We've been talking about it for the last 18 months, and we are seeing real investment happens. Typically, pre-pandemic, a lot of the noise when it came to employee well-being, when it came to benefit wellness, to physical wellness. And they've also realized that somewhere down the line, it helps them be more productive. And if the workforce is engaged, they are confident the day as well. So I think from a corporate India perspective, there is a complete understanding of the situation, and more organizations are trying to look at ways to help employees deal with this.
Where the conundrum is, and Jang, I'll come to you on this point. It's expected, especially in corporate India, that you have to work harder and longer to succeed. It's an ingredient. There is no question of even addressing burnout. It's looked at as a very clear way to sort of hamper change.
Yeah, I think that's something also associated with particular geographies. If you speak to colleagues, and this is when we work and post that's my free time, or weekends are for me, and you'll hear about stories of them going skiing and whatnot. I think more and more corporate India is also realizing, and like I said, workers or other employees are having an honest conversation that they have pursuits outside of the work. And employers to that extent are also looking at it from a standpoint that on one side is of skill supply. So they are absolutely bought into the Pareto principle of as long as you are doing what is required of you, and as long as you are meeting the requirements of the job, and there is a path that exists for you. You don't have to stretch over time. You just need to be more efficient, and that's where the quality of thing about firms setting up global COE, which is nothing but validation of the work that today happens in the country. So from that perspective, I think yes, there used to be I would say understanding or an unsaid rule that you need to be in office before 9 and leave only after your boss has left. I think more and more corporate India is moving away from that culture. Are there workspaces that still follow that? Possibly yes, but at least if you look around, if you ask, and especially in the new age segment, do you do what is required, and beyond that, that's time that you use. Healthy, engaged employer is much more productive than someone spending 9.
That has become a problem where you're on the job, but you're not. Chulani, this McKinsey survey talks globally, but more seems to be a very ill-defined and fairly subject. In your view, could be the closest to defining a toxic workplace, especially from conversations that you have with patients or the feedback that you get from them.
Insecure one. Skill sets are pretty abysmal. People really don't know what they do. And what happens is then you are uplifting them. We're constantly condemning, criticizing, fault finding, putting down, diminishing them. And then the manager. But because the manager feels threatened, he read that survey, and I said that it's more of the young adults. You as a human do not view yourself as capital, and look, you're making one of the biggest mistakes of your life because given. So I think the toxicity is coming because of threat. The toxicity is coming because some of the people who are leading are replaced. And I think then that's when they create a milieu and immediately threatening and power-based.
I just want you to come recognition and identification of a toxic workplace, and who really is going to fix this? Because if you look at this particular report, they give first one of it is for managers to very honestly look at what's happening. Easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very tough step. I'm sorry, who was the question?
Jang. That's
No, I think, see, at the end of the day, the custodian of the talent, that there are processes and checks and balances in place. Almost all organizations run what are called as engagement surveys, which are somewhat early indicators, completely anonymized, of what the organization at large feels. Having said that, there are always softer indicators, your top performers leaving without any productivity getting down. So there are always softer indicators that exist. The leadership needs to set the right example. I think, like Varkha was saying, they need to give security to their managers that forming to the KPIs and KRAs assigned to the managers that we have in the country are also young managers, because the leadership group needs to be able to coach, advise, and help these, not look at them as resources. I kind of hate the term called human resources, because people are not resources, right? And they need to move away from that kind of a mindset and look at how to express their identity and for a positive workplace.
Luke, let me come to you in this situation. And you mentioned in your first response that it's important to draw the line. and realize that when it's getting too much for you, but not everyone may have that choice. It may seem as a luxury to many. How do you navigate that space? What do you advise?
When we talk about drawing the line, it's not all, because then you can solution on what the real problem is. Two is when they manage or wade through that environment. Maybe it can get better. It shouldn't always be that when I have adversity, I want to quit, or I want my managers to change, or I want my employees to change. So again, it comes down to the fundamentals. You know, a healthy physical body is connected with a healthy emotional state of mind, and vice versa. So if I'm a sleep-deprived employee, or I'm a sleep-deprived human, I am not empowered to handle. Low on energy, I'm low on mental focus, I'm low on mental clarity. So there's more space for assumption, guessing, speculating, blaming, you know, all of these common negative emotions that come with it. The same thing, if I'm not eating the right food, it affects the way I think, it affects the way I react. My gut is responsible for how I think, how I feel, how I assess a problem, and vice versa. So you see our physical health themselves with skills and strength, because you know the enemy is getting strong all the time. It's a culture. But is every employee in that culture feeling the toxic environment? Well, but what are the skills that people who are dealing with it and not succumb skills? So I think empowerment of skills, physical health is things that we eat. A lot of employees skip lunches. They don't eat on time. They come hungry to work because they're trying to finish all their work. So when the organization can work with employees around these verticals, food, nutrition, the time that you eat, how you eat. Are you eating stressed out? Your lunch was useless. Are your employees encouraged to sleep well? Today, when we work with some of the top corporates around the world, sleep is being promoted and it's being incentivized for a calmer person. You're less angry, you're less snappy. You can,
stay safe. Luke, that question for you. Sleep well, eat well, and keep your physical activity
exercise,
up no matter
move,
what.
Absolutely, movement. And communicate. When there's a problem, communicate, because your managers you. But if you don't communicate and you expect the company to guess, it's always good.
Problem, as this McKinsey survey has highlighted, it costs the employers. Of course, it costs the employees, it costs individuals, and effectively it costs our society. So we need to address this as a very real issue. I want to thank Coutinho, Varkha Chulani and Jang Bahadur Singh for joining us on this very important discussion. And as